Hey kids, this is Mark Arm from Mudhoney.
I'm Kevin Martin from Cannabis.
This is Nicole Alvarez from the world famous K-Rock.
Hi, I'm Dave Cruzen.
I am Matt Vaughn from Easy Street Records.
This is Richard Stuverud.
Hey, I'm James Joseph from James and the Cold Gun.
This is Jeremy Toback from the band Brad.
And this is the State of Love and Trust.
State of Love and Trust.
State of Love and Trust.
A Pearl Jam podcast.
Don't forget to rate, review, subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen. Feed that algorithm.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the State of Love and Trust. It's a Pearl Jam podcast, and I'm one of your two hosts, Jason Kerepesi. And alongside me, as always, is
Paul Ghiglieri.
Oh, my goodness. Paul, right out of the gate, I want to let people know that if they discern a level of, verklempt-ness in the throats, a bit of extra bagginess in the eye, you and I both are feeling not quite 100%.
Well, luckily for us, there is a remedy.
Black Crowes reference? Well, we've got our own tincture. It's tea. But I got tea in my disco bomb. You got tea in your home away from home mug that one could procure from the pod shop. Link in the description. Mm-hmm. Lots of cool stuff. I got my Still Love and Trust Vitalogy era hoodie behind me. You can't see it, but it's there somewhere. Anyways, I'm dripping. I got tea all over this desk. It's okay. Anyway, hi. How are you out there in podcast land? If you are watching on YouTube, or did you know you can watch on Spotify now? They do video podcasts as well.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So if you're watching in either place, you should be subscribing, liking the video. However, you can do that on Spotify. I'm not really sure how that works. But if you're on YouTube, for sure, like the video, subscribe to the channel. The little bell guy lets you know when the new videos come out every Tuesday. And Paul, if they are listening to us struggle through this, what's it going to take for them to do good by us?
Well, they should rate, they should review, they should subscribe on their preferred podcast platform of choice. Feed that algorithm. It's hungry for something more than stickers. Just saying.
Okay.
Just saying.
We do it every month. It's a fundraiser. We raise money, different nonprofit each month. This month, it's donorschoose.org. On your screen right now is B-roll and a QR code. Scan that bad boy, won't you? There's also a link in the description of the podcast. And if you go into the bio of our Instagram page, there's a direct link to send money to that wonderful organization helping our kids and our classrooms and our teachers do what they need to do. Knowledge is power, right?
Knowledge is power.
Prop them up. And $5 or more. I don't know if Paul is done picking up the stickers from last week, but a pair of stickers and a pin could be yours for $5 or more. I misspoke last week on the giveaway. I reversed our giveaways. My wires got crossed as I gesticulate again. The Donors Choose greatest donator gets the giveaway vinyl, Paul, not the Rockford's music. The giveaway goes to the Donors Choose. So I apologize to anybody who thought that was the other way around. So giveaway, this vinyl could be yours with the greatest
Parker
donation.
Lewis can't lose either way. I'm just going to say.
Parker Lewis has gotten more shout outs on this show in the last 2 months than in the last 30 years combined. Now, if you are a fabulous patron, I mentioned it, you've got a compact disc of Waiting EP and the Rockford's debut on vinyl. That could be yours just for being a patron. Help support the show, as does buying anything from the pod shop. I mentioned the aforementioned mug. The aforementioned mug. I'm already losing my mind. Paul has one too. T-shirts, hoodies, the whole shebang, and we appreciate you for helping us keep the show afloat. Anyway, before we get into it, Paul, I need to mention a couple of wonderful people. One person, friend of the show, we love her. She was a guest a few weeks ago, Anita Stalmashuk from 90 Original. Mm-hmm. She sent me a gaggle. Can I call it a gaggle if it's 3? No, 4 actually. 4 postcards. Look at these postcards she sent me. That's her and her husband, I believe. And you got what's this guy? That's your boy Chris Cornell. What's this one? More Chris. And then the back of one, this lovely little note I put it up on our Instagram story, but here it is. I don't know if you can read that, guys. I'll hold it up. But just thanking us for, everything and being there and being good friends and all that jazz. And we love you, Nita. So thank you for this. And
What are we,
too.
if not a community?
Look at this. There you go.
Yeah.
Palisades Fire supporters. And then also, one of our patrons, Stone Riff, a.k.a. Peter Sprules, he was down there at the shows in Australia and New Zealand, and where they were selling those really fun dog leashes. Got in my fucking face, the drop the leash dog leash. And I go, ooh, that is so dumb, I have to have it. You know what? Send me two so I can make one a giveaway. It finally came in, Paul.
Oh boy.
Here it is. So this will be a giveaway probably next month or something like that. Maybe, I don't know when, but this will be a giveaway. And he actually had a conduit. He had a courier for us. A lovely fan who was attending the shows in Australia and then lives in Modesto, so Central Valley, California represent.
Yeah.
And she sent a lovely little note as well.
This is a Valentine's Day all over again.
I don't know.
Just
I mean,
notes galore.
Let me read it to you real fast. Jason, I hope this package was worth the long wait. The leashes have traveled long distance to find you from Australia to both the North Island and the South Island of New Zealand and now California. Hope this package finds you well. Please let Peter know it arrives safely. He's quite a great guy, both him and Oz. Take care, Brandy. Brandy, what a treat.
We should write Brandy back with the pen of power.
Okay. It's like those Jimmy Fallon letters. Thank you, Brandy. Anyways, I just wanted to acknowledge those
I'm
kind
glad
of people.
you did. Well deserved.
So here's something that I feel like I had this idea. I mean, it's not like a unique idea, but a long time ago to look at the discography and say, okay, we got 12 albums now, and 2 of them have tracks that are the name of the album.
Lightning Bolt and Dark Matter.
That is correct. Mm-hmm. And just so happens, a few weeks back maybe last year, in the Discord, the patrons are going off and doing polls and as they do, and coming to grips with what they thought should be the self-titled song if every other album was named after a song. Mm-hmm. I don't remember what the answers were. This is forever ago. There's all kinds of games and puzzles that we play, so I forget what it was. But you know what? I said, let's just do it. Let's just make that happen because, the Dark Matter single, the lead single, Dark Matter, title track, came out almost a year ago today. So why not go backwards in time, look through the discography of the 10 records that don't have a title track, and choose the song that best would be the title track and rename the album.
Now, mind you, I specifically limited myself to the songs that ended up on these albums.
Oh, absolutely.
Meaning a song like State of Love and Trust.
Oh, what a shirt.
Did not make the list as a possible option. So the candidacy fell flat, unfortunately, for such a great tune. That being said, though, we had some fantastic options on the other 10 albums.
Yes. And I will say, State of Love and Trust would be a great podcast name. Someone should do that.
If only somebody were listening, that might take us up on that suggestion.
Right. So anywho, we got the 10 records here, and we're just kind of rifle through these things because I'll tell you right now, Lyrics to Live By is back, gang. If you're watching on YouTube, you can scroll and you can skip ahead through the chapters if you wanted to. Lyrics to Live By is back, and the patrons had a lot to say about this particular song, so we will dive into that in a little bit later. But the main segment here, I don't know what we're calling it, but it's just pick the new title of each record. So should we go in chronological order? Should we just jump around? What should we do?
Let's go in chronological order.
All right, sir.
I think it helps the listener or viewer build up anticipation because you know what album we're going to next.
That's true. All right, Then let's start with 10, but we're striking that out. Just like Mookie Blaylock was replaced, got the hatchet job from the lawyers, and 10 was the number, which was obviously his jersey number. For those of you who, I don't know how you would know that, but now you know. So instead of 10, what song, Paul, do you say is the best choice to be a title track?
I went with Alive. I say alive
Nice.
because I think that when you think back to all the tracks on this record, from the first one to the last one, there are. It's a dark record. It tackles themes like murder and alienation, loneliness. It tackles really challenging concepts that you wouldn't think such an iconic, rock album with these layers of classic rock influences would necessarily have, because this particular album announced the band to the world, and I think Eddie's delivery and the infectious compositions ultimately were like the perfect marriage. That, dare I say, he could have sung about anything, but I can't say that that's true. You know what I mean? Because it extends more, well beyond, I would say, just the sound of his voice, his delivery, and the power of the music
Anything
itself.
would have been Dirty Frank.
Well, that's the thing, right? I mean,
yeah.
We joke about the irony of Even Flow and how the song's about homelessness, and yet for a while it was holding the mantle as
It was
like
cock rock.
it was like for a fraternity, anthem or something like that. But the reality is that every one of these songs kind of tackles a slice of life, whether it's the absence of a home or the absence of a connection to a parent, the absence of love in one's life, the absence of a lover, the absence of any type of love, really. Whether it's paternal, maternal, like you see in Jeremy, whether it's romantic, like you see in Black, and even the one song, Oceans, which you could argue is a ballad. I would say that song also kind of tackles this desire to have connection and a willingness, but at the same time, there's still this implied void, if you will, in between the waves. So I like the idea of this album being titled Alive, because I think it really examines a wide spectrum of what it means to be alive, and there's the good and the bad that comes with that. You know what I mean? There's to feel is to live, right? And so there's, like I said, a wide spectrum of feeling, some of which is uplifting and makes you feel full of rapture, and some of which is full of despair and alienation and self-doubt and insecurity and questioning, why you ended up in a place like this and just begging for release, to quote the last song. So I think Alive would be a perfect name for this record.
There are some albums where a lot of choices could easily be argued for. I think this is definitely one of them. I think Alive certainly is apropos for the songs and the themes. I went a little bit different. I went with Release.
Fitting.
For me, this record is all about some type of release, be it letting go of like psychological trauma with Alive, letting go frustration over mental health and guns with Jeremy, letting go of heartbreak with Black. And for Jeff and Stone, it was as much about letting go of the past, the dark part of their past, as it was honoring it. I think it was equal
and that was
slices
another
of
reason
that.
why I chose Alive too. Right? You have that.
Maybe it's two sides of the same coin kind of thing.
Exactly.
So I think Ed joining the group and completing the band's pieces was kind of the band's way of kind of releasing this past that kind of bound them to these emotions. And, it was now in the hands and the hearts of the audience. So it was released from them to the audience. And, they say that you have a lifetime to write your first record. So naturally, all the things that you ever wanted to say in the song, kind of they bubble up and find their way out. And this was especially that for Ed. He had been working so hard. Not that other guys weren't, but he's writing all the lyrics in the album. That's what comes out, and it's lifted by the music. So I thought that it was that was an apropos title.
Good call. I think either one of them, you really can't go wrong. And like you said, there is that. It's hard to view 10 without seeing in the context of Mother Love Bone and
Absolutely.
this band that they had been.
It's the
And
Phoenix.
It is, yeah. It's whether it's, hey, we're alive, you know what I mean? We're still alive. Or whether we're here to release all these things that have been bottled up for so long. I think
I also like the foreshadowing of the eventual kind of theme change of the song.
True.
All right, let's go to verses. Paul.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 against 1. There is a confrontational element to this record. I think the band was not prepared for the level of success that they achieved. I think they had hoped for success with 10. And you know, we've had interviews with folks that have talked about how Stone had defined what success would look like, and it was nowhere near the cosmic supernova level that they experienced. And I think that there was kind of a struggle that came with that. And Animal, I'm sorry, and it is not my song, by the way, Animal, but that opening to Animal, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 against 1, it just kind of highlights a lot of what this record was about. You know, this idea that they were retreating inward, and it was them against the world. It was them against the critics. It was them against the naysayers, the ones who said it was a fluke, the ones who said they were, you know, riding the coattails of Nirvana, or however you wanted to.
I'm curious where you're going with this.
Well, yeah, ultimately, it's funny. You talked about our giveaway. I went with Leash as
I love
Leash.
this.
There's something about that song that seemed to embody the spirit of what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 against 1 is all about. And I think so much of this record, you know, from Dissident to Go, to WMA, there's just this constant feeling, this level of combative opposition, and hence the title that it has now, Versus. And Leash, I think, somehow beautifully captures the simultaneous like anger and willful desire to find community in that opposition, because there's a loneliness that comes with being a dissonant. And we see in that song what happens when it's you making a choice on your own, and you know, you find yourself kind of sold out to the authorities, if you will. And there's a lot of ways to look at that metaphorically, but with a song like Leash, it really feels to me like the band kind of was trying to create an anthem that captured the voice of a generation, unironically, and ultimately, through that vehicle, find a sense of community and a tribe, if you will. I think they wanted their tribe. You know what I mean? I don't think they set out to make a record and tour just to, you know, throw a middle finger up to everyone who, you know, didn't want to see what they were trying to do and who they wanted to be. I think that they very much felt like there was a fan base out there that they felt honored to make music for. And I think Leash is that song of, you know, get out of my...
they were playing it, you know, during the back end of the 10 tour, but they put it at the Moore, right? In 92,
yeah, they did. So, I mean, it's... for me, that song is emblematic of so much of what this record was about.
Yeah. No, it's a great choice. You know, we've said it before, we'll say it again. It's obvious there is a rawness to this record that forced my hand to pick Animal. I did consider Leash. I did consider Rearview Mirror. I even considered Blood.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. But I kept on coming back to Animal, and this idea, kind of across the record, of preferring to be with an animal over a particular human. It was very evident. An abuser, Animal. A gun nut, Animal. An abuser 2 or 3 more times, Animals. Racist cops, Animal. Like the obvious answer. And how about, you know, look at rats, you know, the metaphorical ones in the media and the record business were preferring rats to them. So like it also speaks to the basic biology that we are animals, you know, and perhaps it's implied above. But watching much of humanity act in like these devolved ways to base levels of development, it's just sickening, and it's exhausting, and it's simple at the same time. And so this animalistic, raw, primalness was evident in the sound of the music and the ferocity of the music and the directness of the music and the lyrics. So that's why I went with Animal, but I think Leash is a perfectly cromulent choice.
I love that. Cromulent. Great throwback. I don't remember what episode it was. I just slung that word out.
So
Straight
good.
from the pen of power.
Yeah. By the way, the Patreon, the Discord loved Best of Times, Blurst of Times mention.
That was good too. Yeah.
Anyways.
Solid call there.
Vitalogy. It will no longer be called Vitalogy. What will it be called?
It will now be called Corduroy because...
Oh, shit. Okay.
Yes, because Jeff said during the recording of this record that communication was at an all-time low. This is a band at a point in their career that they're struggling with fame because Versus did not dim that star.
No.
If anything, he just poured like a gallon of gasoline all over with that supercharged, rocket that they
You don't
had
like
become.
this, guys?
Yeah.
You don't like all this stuff?
And I think at this point there was frustration, both internally and externally. And you have a record that features Ed playing guitar and singing. So this was a brand new Ed. I was Ed at the forefront of a lot of the decision making processes. You had a transition with drummers. You had Jeff who was contemplating quitting the band at the time. You just had a lot of things happening on a record to a band that was struggling with a lot of things happening to them. Mm-hmm. And Corduroy, to me, kind of represents that struggle with exploitation and vulnerability and fame and kind of being marketed and commercialized at the expense of your identity and your creative ambitions and ingenuity. So I love the idea of like corduroy being this, symbolic, which it is, right? A symbolic word to represent this persona and this record simultaneously being kind of, the band's way of saying, we're not a brand, you know what I mean? We're not an ornament to be adorned on the shoulders of people who just want to pose or who want to live vicariously through some form or movement or trend or whatever you want to call it.
Stop commodifying my character.
There was a commercialization and like you said, I'm trying to come up with a way to profit off of the likeness and the image of these artists who were trying to be their authentic selves, and I think Corduroy does that very, very well. And I think this record on so many levels is about that across the board. It's a very rhythmic, eclectic record. There's not a lot of guitar solos on it. I kind of feel like it was a band in transition. So
I like it. I hadn't thought of it at all. I mean, obviously the themes are the themes, right? And so it's just how we're approaching that and your interpretation of Corduroy, I think is really well done. And I also think that you could have substituted it for Not For You.
Which was my first choice initially.
There you go. Okay. Neither one of those are my choice, but both are great. My choice is Immortality.
Ooh, that's an interesting pivot.
Yeah.
Explain yourself.
Study of life is Vitalogy, right?
Indeed it is.
Okay. So we often study or analyze life by its juxtaposition with death.
Okay.
Right? How do we keep from dying? How do we live more healthily so we put off death? How do we put on we have creams to make the wrinkling not happen as quickly? All this stuff. And I don't. How do we maximize life, I guess, is my point. And in that, you could say, well, how can we achieve immortality? And I don't mean it in an arrogant way. I think we all want this. And what I mean by that is this is usually manifested in our children or the way that we affect others in our daily life through kindness and compassion or greed and callousness, depending on who you are. So our legacy carries on through our memories, but it's defined by how we lived our lives. And all the challenges we face, they're touch points and tests to reveal puzzle pieces of what our legacy will be. And I feel like that shows itself across the record in different ways and culminates with Immortality, which probably should be the actual end of the album, with Foxy Mop being a hidden track. But we've already retracked this album, so we can't do that again.
Yeah.
But I just think that encapsulates the mood and this idea of the study of life so well, because you can't have dark without light, you can't have death without life. Like there's this, how do you avoid one thing? I mean, in Immortality itself, the song, the parallel train of Kurt's life, as Ed put it, you know, you can become immortal in the way that you think you should be by burning out. I should say burning out instead of fading away. Is that what Neil Young said?
It's better to burn out than to fade away.
There you go. Uncle Neil. That's where I went.
Oh, fantastic. Love that.
Okay, so now we are in 96. We are going to No Code.
96.
No longer No Code, though, Paul. So what's it going to be?
No longer No Code. This was a band starting to come apart at the seams. I misspoke. I said Jeff had contemplated quitting the band during Vitalogy. It was actually during No Code, where he had been.
He may have been.
Yeah, he may have. For all I know.
Push over the edge, really. Yeah.
You got Jack there behind the kit, and it was a time where they just, if they all were playing at the same time, they would just get upset with each other. You know, that they were really at odds for the majority of this period. This is when Eddie had really assumed a lot more control over the band, and this record kind of moved in a very, very different direction. It was a direct and explicit departure away from that like arena rock sound of 10, and this was more of kind of like a noisy garage rock, almost purposeful,
very intentional,
and intentional sabotaging of that previous sound. And in some ways, there were some amazing things that came out of it. I mean, a lot of ways, this record is almost like, Pearl Jam's Revolver, if you will, if you want to try to find a comparable from the Beatles catalog. I say that because it's a record that kind of represented the band's first foray into these, realms of spirituality and thinking about what it means to live and die. And mostly, I think, just kind of like reflection and introspection and self-examination. And you see more of that in this song. And I think it's because you have a group of artists that are
What's the song again? Did you say it?
I'll get to that in a second. You have a group of artists that are kind of at a place
I missed it.
where they're kind of, circling around their 30s and or approaching 30, I should say. And they're kind of finding themselves just wanting to just kind of step away from it all and have a smoke in a tree and kind of figure out who they are and where they're going and what they're doing with their lives. So In My Tree, to me, is representative of so much that this recording process was about and much of what the record is comprised of. And so, I like this idea that you have a song that ultimately kind of, tries to encapsulate this idea of not having a code, you know what I mean? Like just going against the expectations and against the grain and seeing what happens when you explore these wider ranges of moods and instrumentation than what you have done previously. So for me, In My Tree here.
I'll tell you what, I actually hadn't considered that one, but I think there are, I mean, your reasoning is sound, but there were other ones that I was contemplating. I could have made an argument for a couple other ones. Off He Goes, I think could have totally worked. I think I'm Open works. I think Who You Are and Around the Bend both work.
Completely.
My choice,
agree.
though, is not any of those. Can you tell what it is? I don't know why I make you guess, but it's fun.
I'm going to say Smile.
No.
Ooh, okay.
No, that's cool, though. The choice is present tense.
Oh, okay.
And I think that, standing still, finding solitude and recognizing the moment, that's the healing that they were really trying to get after around this time. And it was true then, and maybe even truer now, considering how crazy modern life is. It feels like there's never enough hours in the day to accomplish kind of what you need to do, what's on your plate, and spend real time with those you care about. And like pay attention to what's happening around us. Like life is exhausting, but you'll never get through it unless you take time for yourself to breathe, look inward, and appreciate the moment. And I think that we learn from our past, but we need not dwell on it. Thinking about, what could be greater than us. to the challenges of love, to fostering and maintaining friendships. Like if you are not comfortable with yourself and your place in the world, none of these things will make sense, and none of them are going to flourish. So I felt like it all started at finding a present tense. And one could argue you could find that present tense at the top of the tree. So maybe you're even earlier in the food chain in this idea than me. But as much as those other songs jumped out, I couldn't get away from present tense.
I like it. It.
Okay, so now we're up to Yield.
The album of the month?
Yeah, album of the month, really. What are we calling it now, Paul?
Oh, this one was challenging for me. I went with Do the Evolution, mostly because, yes.
I'm surprised by that.
Well, at the end of No Code, Eddie had said to Jeff, maybe we need to explore a process where you guys are bringing in something that's a little bit more complete so that I'm not putting all this pressure on myself to have to complete these songs in the same way. And I think that everybody, Jeff said everybody took that to heart. And what was interesting was Matt saying during that time that he was actually a little bit afraid of that for a period of time, and or he used to feel that way.
Matt was?
And Mike, sorry. And
Mike. Oh yeah, Mike, yeah.
I don't think Matt's afraid of anything.
Fair.
Yeah. And I think that's why they love him. But Mike had felt that Ed was more centered around this point in time, and I think that there's a structure to Yield that it's not present on the prior two albums. It does have more of kind of that, what people call at the time the return to form, or whatever you want to call it. It's more like a straightforward rock approach. But despite that, you still have songs like Push Me, Pull Me, and Red Dot, and some other things going on. The chorus of Pilot that I think showcase the band's willingness to still experiment and kind of do things that are a little avant-garde. But I've said this in the past. So much about what this album is. It feels like it's a book club where the band were reading these texts. You know, we talked about Dan Quinn's Ishmael and some writings of Bukowski and some other things, and it just felt to me like the band members were having these conversations about these readings, and it was occurring. It was manifesting itself through the music, and I think part of it was that the band, they were able to come with their own material, which was a departure from a lot of what the last two records were about and how they were composed. So there was a yielding, I think, across the board from Ed to each of his band members, in addition to the greater yielding as well that was happening on a societal level for the band, when it comes to their place within the greater society in which they were making music for at that point in time in the 90s. So I like the idea of doing the evolution, because they seem to kind of be willing to re-embrace things in a different way, and kind of want to be a part of something that's a little bit different. Kathy talked about this idea, like No Way being a definitive statement that says, I'm not trying to make a difference, no way, meaning no way am I going to give up on this.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really interesting interpretation of that song.
Yeah, I agreed. Yeah. The idea of the band and their songwriting process evolving as well alongside these ideas.
Yeah, there's a calmness. It's a frenetic record at times, but there's also a calmness to it. I think, there's this desire to face things with more positivity, accepting the fact that sometimes things just aren't great.
Yeah.
But at the same time, let's try and have a more positive mindset. Let's be solution oriented. Let's be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem, or just write records complaining about the problem. So yeah. I think that Do the Evolution was kind of that. That you got a song that's it's ironic in the sense that it feels like it's a celebration of this exploitation and of depravity, when in fact it's highly critical. Mm-hmm. And the evolution is less about man evolving into this, unstoppable force of destruction. And it's more about the capacity within people to start a revolution that initiates real change to prevent things like that from happening. So.
Well, I hadn't thought of that song as as an option, honestly, although you make a good argument for it. I would say that for me, this one actually jumped out a little bit easier, kind of like Vitalogy and Immortality did for me. I'm going with Given to Fly.
Nice.
And I think the theme and the argument here was we are here to put good stuff out there. And to accept that good stuff and to dish it back out again. And this give and take of love is only made possible from understanding and compassion. But to achieve those things, we got to be willing to work together, man. and those, much in the same way the band was collaborating, as you said, on this record from a song making perspective. And again, many challenges still exist, but we are not here on this earth to simply accept them. We are not here to acquiesce. We are here to move the needle, leave a mark. There's legacy in that, and again, legacy. And as we've been talking about this record all month, Yield does a great job of painting a full picture of what ails this world. He mentioned the evolution. There you go. There's all the problems on the table. But it's also how we live within it while doing what we can to be a beacon in that fog. So I think this new title would be a reminder of kind of what we're meant to be and why we're here. We are given to fly. So more of the hopeful side of the record than the, what's the word I'm looking for? Because Do the Evolution is a very clever title. Mine's less clever. Mine's just hopeful, wistful. I guess, I don't know. The people out there will tell me if it's any good.
Nice.
I accept your decision. All right, we're halfway through. We're going to binaural.
All right. Gosh, this one was tough because there's a lot of great options on this one. Ultimately, I went with Light Years for a few reasons. Number one, I feel the packaging, which took this like modified Hubble Space Telescope photo of this like planetary nebula. I don't remember which one it's called. I think got that like hourglass thing going on. I always think
Dr. Strawn will tell us. Dr. Amber Strawn, please tell us what the hell it is. I forget.
Well, I mean, I'm looking at this quote from Jeffrey. He says the reason that we went with Chad Blake is because he provides this amazing atmosphere to the songs. So we wanted the artwork to represent that. One of the themes that we've been exploring is just realizing that in the big scheme of things, even the music that we make, when we come together, no matter how powerful it is, it's still pretty minuscule. I think for me, the whole space theme has a lot to do with scale. You look at some of those pictures, and there are 13 light years in 4 inches in that picture. And so for me, I always think of the cover of the album whenever I hear the song Light Years. I have no other connection to like a memory or like there's no personalized connection for me with that song. I just think of the album cover for that reason. But they made this conscious decision to move away from recording with Brendan O'Brien and do this with Chad Blake, who was, experimenting with this binaural recording process, and which worked really, really well for the slower songs on the record, like Of the Girl and
Sleight of Hand.
Sleight of Hand, great. But then for the heavier songs, they ended up going back to Brendan. And then he helped them kind of like find the final sequencing of the record. So I thought it was interesting that it was like they tried to move away from something that was familiar and that had grounded them, and then ultimately came right back again. And it just shows how powerful that connection with Brendan is, and what they're able to do. But I mean, kudos to the band for wanting to try something different.
Yeah.
And I think it largely worked, quite frankly, on a lot of those songs. I don't think they would sound or be the same if you didn't have that willingness to experiment and have that recording process to facilitate that experimentation. So for me, Light Years, I think it's representative of the packaging. It's representative of a band that, had taken what felt to them probably like light years to get to this place. This is also a point in time where, you're starting to see a lot of that Seattle scene starting to kind of like, you're seeing cracks in the foundation, Well,
I think we were closer to the And in the beginning there, at that point.
Well, yeah, I suppose so. I mean, we had lost Kurt at that point in time. I mean, Soundgarden was up and down. Smashing Pumpkins had experienced loss. I mean, for sure, we still had Lane though, for the
Barely.
most part, I think, barely. So, I don't know. It just, for me, Light Years, just there's this atmospheric.
So you're going based off of the sound qualities.
It's not
as
just
much
the
as
sound qualities. I think to me, it was just this idea that there's scale to so much of what they're doing. Like that they had gone through what felt like hell and back again over the course of the last couple of albums. And then they've adopted this perspective now that what we're going through is just this tiny little thing in the grand scheme of the universe, and putting things into scale and having that perspective. And yeah, you know what I mean? So I think that it helped ground them in a lot of ways. And so I just think that it's the kind of song that represents, much like the other choices I've made, so much of what the rest of the album is about. In this case, both artistically, visually, and sonically.
Yeah, that 4 inches is 13 light years is pretty.
That's crazy.
We are tiny. So I went with Nothing As It Seems.
That was the choice I had before this one.
Oh, fun. I wonder if my reasoning is where you would have gone. This one, it had me really intrigued in similar ways to No Code. I could see a reason to pick a few other songs, but ultimately, I think misunderstanding or what's the word I'm looking for? Misalignment between two or more people causes this friction. It causes divide. And so often we don't recognize that until it's too late. There's so much conflict on this record, from Breaker Fall to God's Dice to Rival, Evacuation, Insignificance, Grievance, Parting Ways. I mean, my God, there's a lot of conflict on this record. Those of us who try to look at the world through positive lenses sometimes can be hoodwinked, have the rug pulled out from under us. There can be a despondency when that happens. So at the time, we're coming off the heels of a Bill Clinton administration that on the surface to many we were making some progress here. We had a surplus, for Christ's sake. I mean, when's the last time we had that? Him. But there were cracks. Right? Right. Nothing was as it seemed. There were those fissures. Those fissures were exploited and exposed after this. And not just by those in government, too. Like, you had cable news, you had radio, and there started to become a very obvious other being portrayed by those two entities, if not more entities. And I think it kind of began, 20 years earlier under Reagan, but that was starting to bear fruit. And regular Americans kind of being turned on each other by the power brokers. I mean, this is all starting to come to light. The internet's starting to become more and more powerful as far as information dissemination. So you think you have this glorious, peaceful moment, but it's giving way to division. You've got Columbine. You've got obvious wealth inequality. Yeah. You've got these endless wars that are starting. They're peaking. I'm reminded of Rage Against the Machine at the Democratic National Convention here in Los Angeles. Like, they were like, both y'all suck. This sucks. We're headed the wrong way. Like, oh yeah. And at the time, Ed's railing about Ralph Nader. Like, it was. You thought we were doing well out of the '90s. We really weren't. So I think that nothing really was as it seemed, and Pearl Jam was speaking to those exposed fissures here in Binaural. So Nothing As It Seems for me.
I like it.
Okay, so now we are going to Riot Act just 2 years later, but it's no longer called Riot Act. Sorry, Brad Clausen, change your artwork. What is it going to be?
Oh, gosh. I'm going half full.
Okay, all right.
I'm
Let's
going
go.
half full. This is this one, it's the muscular art record in the catalog. You got these.
Is there anything in real life called muscular art?
I guess so, but when I think of this album, that's what it feels like to me. You get just a lot. It's an art rock record, you know what I mean? But there's just this like raw, crunchy guitar sound to it, and you think about what all these songs are about. I mean, you're simultaneously dealing with existentialism on one hand, and what it means to live and die on another, and this is all happening at the same time as September 11, and this personal tragedy for the band at Roskilde, and trying to deal with love and losing people and struggling to make a difference, and this need to see things half full,
Oh, man.
or half empty, and how ultimately the perspective by which you adopt completely shapes your worldview and how you interact with people around you. So I like the idea that this record is kind of that dichotomy there, because so much of it is, to me, whether you're thumbing your way to heaven, and or all is lost in all or none, or it's Love Boat Captain. All you need is love. You know what I mean? It's just that, like you mentioned this earlier, two sides of the same coin. So I think for me, Half Full is that song that is representative of that half full cup, if you will. And if you want to see it as half empty, then that's going to dictate how, what you get out of life and what you're able to contribute to it versus seeing it half full. So
This is such an interesting choice. I love that the album, this album title relies on the user's perspective. That is so interesting because I think our reasoning for our approach, I think our approaches are similar in that my song title, my new album title, I should say, is All or None. And you know me, I like a provocative title. Gets the people going, I like titles that will catch your eye and make you do like what was that?
Right.
All or none. That's strong. That's this binary choice, right? Black and white. And if binaural was a warning, Riot Act was like the articulation of some of the lowest lows we could feel. But with it came a few moments of respite, as you said. You got a few moments of hope popping up, like little saplings after a wildfire has scorched the earth, if you will, popping up. There's possibility here. You mentioned something in my way. Love Boat Captain, You Are. Like there is something to hold on to, and it could be all those great things, or it could be none of them. As you mentioned, the choice is ours. Is it dire? Is it immediate? Will it take hard work? Yes. Yes, because if we don't give it our all, we'll have nothing. So it really is an all or none moment. And I think, again, the coin thing, I think half full is like the other version of what I just said, I think. To me, it does, at least.
Great call. Like it a lot.
So we are moving past this now to 2006. We've got No More Avocado. Brad is so happy he doesn't have to put an avocado on his record anymore. He's got a new marching orders. So what is Pearl Jam going to be called now?
Worldwide Suicide. I think back to what Eddie said about, having the birth of his daughter and how he saw the world, the planet, as his daughter's world now. And it made him that much more incensed. I'm going to quote Mike here. Mike said, "We all feel that we're living in tumultuous, frightening times, and that ranges from the Iraq War to Hurricane Katrina to wiretap and anything that smacks of totalitarianism and just bad political decisions being made. We feel that as Americans, and we're frustrated. So a lot of those feelings have come out in these songs." And then Eddie said the hope was going to be in the guitar solos. It was the guitars and drums going at it that was going to lift you out of the dark abyss that I had painted. And that abyss is the worldwide suicide. And, the music kind of like rages against that, if you will. I think that the lyrics depict that frustration and the danger and the outrage over what was happening at that particular point in time with the Iraq War and the war on terror and everything else that would be impending. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think for me, while this isn't a concept album, it's notable that this is the first time in what felt like, I think, more than a decade that the band did not, the model of them coming in with something and then, collaborating that way, this had changed. They came in with nothing but some guitar riffs, and they sat down and they had to hash this out as a group. And I think that they had to go through what they went through in order to get to this place. And now that there was unity in the way that they can record a record, they had this fresh perspective. The foggy lens was cleared off and they could clearly see what was happening in the world around them. And they had the ability to see it through the lens of others, in this case, children. So.
Yeah, that was the first one that popped out to me. And I thought, you know what, Jason? Go deeper. That's too good. You have to go deeper and find something else. So I'm trying. I'm gonna try a wild card here.
Do it. Challenge yourself.
Yeah. There is a marker. No one sees it because the sand has covered over all the messages it kept, misunderstanding what original truth was and out expanding in a faith, but not in love. What went wrong? Marker in the sand. There are signs everywhere that only you can see that it'll spring a memory or it'll fire like a synapse that means something to you. The question is, will you act to make the world better around you? You know, there is still at this point in the band's timeline, in our timeline, there is still a lot of negativity held over from Riot Act. But there is also some hope again and more of it. And it's more pointed, I think. And I think this record is less a warning than it is a lesson. Like, here is the fallout from all of that shit that we've been through. Look at all that shit. It sucks. And now, what are you going to do about it? You know, we're still here. And while there's a giant mess, we can and should fix it. But the opportunities to do so may not always be obvious. Like, there's a lot of negativity. And that noise will obscure those opportunities sometimes. So stay sharp and ultimately be that human light, as Mike wrote, for others to find and follow. So you've got to find those moments to be the light. And those are the markers in the sand for me. Just trying to find something a little different with this one because Worldwide Suicide seemed like, yep, that's it.
Well said. I like that.
So now, here's the challenge. Backspacer. The happiest record? I don't know. But it's the shortest for sure. What are we calling it now?
It like blurs by like the speed of sound, doesn't it?
Is that it? Is that your choice?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
So this is the first time they went back to recording with Brendan O'Brien to remake, not remake, but to create a full album since Yield, I think. And so I thought that it was interesting that there was this desire with this record to kind of yield, if you will, pun intended, to Brendan's thoughts, his ideas, and his suggestions, and that they had reached a state of security, and that this record is unapologetically assured because there's a self-assurance in their playing, because it's a lot more fun, like you said. There's a bit more upbeat nature to it, and I think that they had that self-assured level of confidence and self-validation in who they are and what they do and the kind of music that they can make. That they were, I think, at a place in their lives and in their songwriting where they could kind of do that with somebody that they're making a record with. And I think that this idea of speed of sound, it just kind of captures so much of what this record is about. It moves quickly, but it's also it's supercharged in a lot of ways, and it's up tempo in ways that none of the other records are, because there's like a sludginess at times on all the other records, and you never get that with this one. There's almost a borderline poppiness to it at times, which kind of sounds weird when you think about it. But and I don't know if this has any correlation. Perhaps it does. Eddie credited Obama's inspiration or election, I should say, as an inspiration for some of the optimism in the lyrics. But I think the band was hurtling through this record, and they weren't really sure what they were hurtling towards. Yeah, I really do, and I think that's okay. You know what I mean? I think that's part of the magic of the record. It's just this experience of pressing go. You know what I mean?
Hop on the train,
hopping on the train, and hopping off. Exactly, and it's just the speed of sound for me.
Well, I went with The Fixer.
Good choice.
The actual title, Backspacer, is about deleting the past and starting over. So what is starting over but fixing that which is broken? This one felt kind of easy for me. That one popped off the page, and I couldn't find a better reason to not have it be the one. And this new title suggests that we are each the fixer in our own lives. We own it. It's on us. Recognize your agency, people. Recognize the agency. And the themes they shift around a bit more than other records for me, but there is something about appreciating what you have, and maybe there was a gratitude that Ed felt with that Obama election, where he was like, okay, I can feel settled, I can look around you, I can feel appreciative of what I have because things are calmer now, or whatever he was feeling. And if the last few records showed us what losing everything can look like and feel like, and we made it out of the avocado era, realizing we can move beyond all that, then this album is about taking action to correct mistakes and being grateful for what we still have, and the ability to carry on at all, to be able to get on that train. So I think The Fixer is the one for me.
I like it. That's a good one.
We are now at the final choice, because Lightning Bolt was Lightning Bolt and Dark Matter was Dark Matter. So instead of Gigaton, instead of a very, very large amount of ice, what are we going with?
Well, what's interesting to me about this one is I was able to think about Pearl Jam's catalog if Lightning Bolt didn't exist, like going from Backspacer to Gigaton. And it's a wild leap. I don't think Gigaton exists without Lightning Bolt. There is a transitional bridge between both lyrically and sonically between Backspacer and Gigaton that it's without Lightning Bolt, it just feels so dramatically stark that it's almost hard to reconcile. So for that reason, I think I developed yet another, level of appreciation for Lightning Bolt, both as a record and its place in the catalog. But Retrograde for me, I think, is the song that captures what Gigaton is really about. The word itself means to move backwards. And I think that so much of what we're doing is moving backwards. It's almost like the earth is telling us, you are ruining me. And, we continue even today to, push policy that ultimately just, flies in the face of that reality. And I don't know, I think that record was dynamic in its sound. And I think that there was a conscious effort on the part of the music and the delivery of the music through video content to try and create this affective experience for listeners and viewers. And there was a shock quality to it. You know what I mean? Kind of like a wake up moment. And I think, releasing Dance of the Clairvoyance as an opening single, I thought was kind of that like slap in the face, like, hey,
Oh yeah.
And, I remember your reaction to hearing it for the first time. So I was like, whoa, okay, I'm awake now.
I'm awake. Well, listen, you're knocking on the door that I'm on the other side of. My choice here is Buckle Up.
Oh, that's a good call too.
Truth be told, I don't really love any of these to be album titles, but Buckle Up for me is the right answer because of its simplicity and its directness. So you've got, think about Samuel L. Jackson in Jurassic Park. Hold on to your butts. That's what we're talking about here, right? I just don't like the phrase "buckle up." Like it sounds, I don't know. It's not quite sophomoric, but it sounds like a little cheesy. That phrase. I don't know why that feels cheesy to me.
It sounds like a '70s rock album from
It just that phrase. I just don't like the phrase. Anyways, nevertheless. The definition of that phrase is very apt, probably more so than anything on the record for what it's trying to convey for me. So I think we're back to living in this unstable mess of a world, and are you ready to give up and let it swallow you, or will you accept the responsibility that you have a part to play and in the renaissance of maturity, empathy, and the promise of what our humanity can be? Buckle up, mother. This section was for kids. That's why I did not say that part. There we go. So let's run through them real fast, Paul, shall we?
Let's do that.
Go ahead. Give me just go down the gauntlet there.
Okay, so I started with Alive for 10, Leash for Verses, Corduroy for Vitalogy, In My Tree, No Code, Do the Evolution Yield, Light Years Binaural, Half Full, Riot Act, Worldwide Suicide from the self-titled Pearl Jam album, Speed of Sound for Backspacer, Retrograde from Gigaton.
All right, and I went Release in place of 10, Animal in place of Verses, Immortality in place of Vitalogy, Present Tense in place of No Code, Given to Fly instead of Yield, Nothing As It Seems instead of Binaural, All or None in place of Riot Act, Marker in the Sand instead of Pearl Jam, The Fixer instead of Backspacer, and Buckle Up instead of Gigaton. I want comments. I want responses. I want you to get into the comments below of this video. If you're watching on YouTube, I want comments in the Instagram post, on Facebook, whatever you feel like doing. Discord channel for all of our patrons out there. Let us know what your choices would be. And for our patrons on Discord, you know, I know we did like the cumulative group effort with the voting and the polls. No. That was all nice. Now be selfish. Give me your choices. Don't bend the knee to Justin or Johnny or Rosemary. Like, you know, this is your life. Sorry, I didn't single you guys out. But you know what I'm talking about. Anyways, let's move on, as I mentioned before, to lyrics to live by. All right, Paul, lyrics to live by, our evolved lyrics segment.
Now we can bend the knee to all of those fine.
We absolutely can, and we will. So this is, we put it out there. I put a couple of polls out there. I'm out here bad-mouthing the polls, and I'm going to use the polls. So I said, what record should the next lyrics to live by come from? And then we kind of scored it down to like 3, and then the choice was obvious, and it was Avocado, and the song is Unemployable. So the people had things to say. Let's go through some of what they had to say. Stip, our friend Stip, he says, while I am on board with the sentiment, working class, coded right wing with the Jesus Saves ring detail, man slowly walking, scared alive, to the reality that capitalism finds him and his family disposable, the glossy pop sheen ends up feeling a little smug or dismissive to me. The song doesn't generate the empathy it needs. This was the one less favorable, interpretations of this. The rest of these, I will say, there's a lot of interesting analogies and personal connections. Derek Lobb, I hear Unemployable as an extension to Maggie's Farm. Oof, that great Bob Dylan song. It's a song that echoes resistance and calls to remember the humanity behind the labor. I deeply connect, as in 2006, I had finished apprenticeship in a labor union and was beginning a career of traveling with my craft from job to job and city to city. I know these people. I have been this person. Oh boy. It is not enough to recognize the plight of our labor. It is imperative to stand up and fight against the invisible chains that bind us together. This song is a reminder that behind every finished structure or ribbon cutting and bell ringing at the NASDAQ, there is a web of sacrifice, often unseen, but profoundly felt by the men and women who make these events possible. Fuck yeah. This is the part where the kids can't listen. Yes, Derek. Justin Perkins says, if you have ever worked retail or restaurants or any customer service industry, it is easy to relate to this song, but also easy to distance yourself from it if you aren't living paycheck to paycheck in a stressful job that doesn't even pay enough to survive, let alone build a future. When we are living in an era where those that believe everything should be privatized and run like a corporation to make money, we disconnect from the real human lives. The stranger is the CEO or the shareholder who only has a bottom line of this quarter's profits. So maybe that is why the song is forgettable. Or maybe I don't want just the revelation. I want the answers as well. So there is a bit of a connection to what Stip was saying. It's like, you've presented me this problem, the idea that, like, yeah, this wealth inequality that I mentioned before. What's the answer, guys? Maybe the answers are hard because you have to convince a lot of people that reality is reality. Anyway, Juan Torres, he says, there's only been twice in life where I was unemployed. The first was after I got out of the service. I was not worried about finding another job since I was
still in my early 20s. The second was when the company I worked for shut down during the break of COVID. This time I was worried. I was in my early 40s, married with kids. It's very stressful and depressing at the same time. This song resonates with our nation's current situation. So many government employees losing their jobs under the new regime's agenda. Trump's agenda. I wonder how many of those Jesus saves voted for him, only to be this life is sacrificed. And again, we're quoting from the song there. So
Right. Yeah. Chris Saylor says, parenthood is in large part one continuing anxiety attack over whether you are doing right by your children. Hell yeah, Chris.
that isn't the truth.
And giving them the best chance at a future life you can. I mentioned immortality, legacy. To be in a position where that future is being impeded or stripped away by someone else is crippling. He goes, I don't smoke, but to me, the line about the cigarette speaks to how anxiety and depression rob you of even the simplest joys. And that closing line, if I can't sleep, how will I ever dream, really rocks me. Johnny Savoy, the great Johnny Savoy from Calgary, he says this. The lyrics on bills unpaid, waking up, no sleep, wondering if you can not only still dream but realize your dreams hits home. It is frightening when you're young, especially with kids, wondering how you're not only going to pay the bills, but help your family realize their dreams. I wish there was more hope to point to in this song, a way out, a way forward. I also realize that for big parts of the population in all of our countries, hope does not feel it is ever at their doorstep. Agreed.
Yeah.
And I want to end with Rosemary because she has a great point here. Another personal story. You want to read this one, Paul?
Sure. I remember clearly getting the call that made me redundant from my job in 2018. And although I didn't like my job, nor was this unexpected due to funding cuts, the loss of control hit me hard. Unemployable can mean not desirable for a job, and that is how I felt, devalued and worthless. It is important when we see work and those that do it devalued and considered expendable to remember that work brings dignity, respect, and in fact is necessary for any economy to thrive.
Not only any economy, but a government, a country, a state.
Yeah.
These things don't just happen. You can't just use a what do you call those swinging dudes? Those what are those things called?
A
swing.
scythe?
No.
A guillotine? What are you talking about?
No, like when they're demolishing stuff, those big balls.
Wrecking ball.
Wrecking ball. Jesus Christ, Jason. As a Miley Cyrus fan, I should know. I'm just kidding. She's all right. Anyways, you can't just use a wrecking ball to like complicated industry or government, as some are finding out when they fired 300 people that have our nuclear, arsenal under control, and then they had to rehire them back. Not everything should run like a business. Anyways, that's a whole thing. But the point is that I think our patrons nailed it. There is that uneasy feeling of recognizing when you are a pawn and you're not appreciated for the wealth you're creating for others. And not all corporations are like this. Obviously, a lot of smaller businesses are not like this. But too many are.
Yeah.
And this is what you get. So I wish, like you guys, that the song had a message of not hope, but solutions, and it doesn't. Maybe that's another song. At any rate, let's check out one of their choices for live cut of the week.
Ready to stand up!
All right, Paul, live cut of the week. Way back when, this is one of our earlier choices, I want to say.
Yeah.
I believe we went to the Gorge in 06. I want to say that's what we chose. So the gang chose 4 other options for us. And what was our favorite of the 4?
Well, they all chose some fantastic versions of this, and it spanned from 2006, pardon me, all the way to 2013. So you had a nice range of performances, and eras of the band. We're going to go with Letterman in New York on May 4th, 2006.
All right, this is a little number called Unemployable.
All right, there it was. Video and all. Thanks, Pearl Jam and Letterman crew. There is definitely an energy in the room for this one.
Yeah.
I've never actually been to a taping of any show at the Ed Sullivan Theater, but it is not big. It is legendary, though, and you will no doubt know many of the acts that have performed there, including the Beatles and many, many other bands. But there was a vibe in there, and this was that they performed on the show, and this was like a post-show concert that streamed online. I want to say on AOL or something like that.
Yeah.
I forget the website, but it was an online stream. I remember watching it live as it happened. You know, grainy. It wasn't like wasn't great video quality at the time for the stream, but the album had only been out 2 days, so most fans had a very, very short amount of time to get used to any of these songs, and it popped. I feel like the audience responded to it. It's tight, it's inspired, and I will say I love that you didn't hear it on that version there, but after the thing cuts off, Ed, before they start the next song, talks about how, you know, that last line isn't scared of life, it's scared alive, and those are two very different things. Before they jump into the next song, but anyways. I've always loved that concert. I know that it's kind of got this cult following of like a really cool, fun show.
I'm totally with it.
Well, gang, that is the episode for this week. I implore you to go ahead and scan the QR code on your screen right now. That will send you to our Instagram bio donation page for DonorsChoose.org. They are a fabulous organization helping classrooms all around the country. $5 or more, get stickers and a pin from us. Paul is throwing them. I am showing them to you. And the greatest donator, the biggest donation person, I'm going to do it right this time. The giveaway vinyl is your prize if you are the biggest donator to this wonderful cause. And, if you want to help this show out, we don't have sponsors. So if you want to help this show maintain its status as a thing, become a patron. And you could perhaps be the lucky one who wins this. The vinyl of the Rockfords and the CD, the Waiting EP on compact disc. The studio cuts from the Rockfords could be yours just for being a patron. We thank you in advance. And if you want to go to our shop and buy something, that also helps a lot. It goes all back into the show. So thank you to everybody who's bought. Step just got a shirt. He got his full grunge jacket shirt. So good for thank you, Step. We appreciate you. Yeah,
we do.
Anywho. Back next week with another fabulous show. I assure you, another Clerks reference. I think I've done that 15 million times on this show. It's true though; they're all great. I can't. It's like my children. I can't pick just one. Right?
Even down under the weather, like we are tonight, we work hard to deliver. Jason,
that's true. The tea is gone. I'm going to collapse in about 18 seconds. But we'll be back with you next week and better than ever. Sure, why not? Until then, you've been listening to or watching
The State of Love and Trust.